Hello, and welcome to this tutorial of the Elementi software. Today we'll be going over layer properties. Whenever you add a layer into Elementi, you have the option to edit its properties with the Layer Properties dialog. This Layer Properties dialog can be used to change various settings of your layer, such as changing opacity, adding borders, editing transitions, and many more things. Layer properties are broken into three categories depending on what type of layer you are editing. For media layers, the layer properties are referred to as media properties. For text layers, the properties are referred to as text properties, and for a web page properties. Let's start with a simple text layer. So if you look on my preview panel, here to the left, you'll see that I have a text layer taking up most of my screen. What I'm going to do is go to the right and select my layer and double click on the blue gear to the right. Once I open this up, you'll see that we have different tabs inside of the Layer Properties dialog. Let's start with Essentials. Begin time is the time that your layer will start to play in your screen. So by default, it's all 0, so the start time would be 0. You can change it to, let's say, 15. And this means that this layer will display at 15 seconds once your project is started. So if I click OK, and I go back to the beginning on my timeline, you'll see that once we hit 15 seconds, my text layer is going to appear inside of my preview panel. Next, we have duration. So by default, my text layer duration is indefinite, but I can also specify how long it will appear. So I can say 10 seconds, 15 seconds, or even longer, whatever time that I would like to put in here. Below this, we have opacity. So opacity will give me the ability to kind of watermark my layer. So I can change it from 1, which is the maximum, down to 0.6 or even 0.2. So you'll see here in my preview panel, when I go down to 0.2, it kind of watermarks my text layer. Horizontal align is how my text will be aligned within my layer. So right now I have it centered, but we have other options, which are left, right, and even justify. Down below horizontal align, we have vertical align. So we can have it aligned to the top, the middle, or even the bottom. Below vertical align, we have position, so we can actually type in the position on the screen where our layer is going to be displayed. We can actually drag and drop it in the preview panel to position it, or we can actually type in left, top, width, and height to specify our size and where the layer is located on our screen. So this is just an alternative option for where you're going to position your layer if you prefer to not drag and drop it on the screen and edit it that way. Next, we have smart text. So by default, I have no smart text, but smart text is really useful for editing your text or putting special properties on the text to improve readability. So we have different options. The first would be uniform, so you could squeeze it or put it in different formats. Next, we have an automatic fit. We have an automatic scroll, ping pong left to right, bottom to top, and ping pong top to bottom. So let's go to our Edit Text tab. We'll go up to the top, click Edit Text. So this is where we can edit our text inside of our layer. Right now I just have some standard text that I typed in. If I wanted to edit it, I could just type anything that I want inside of here. I can also highlight the text and change its color or format. So if I just click on this T, I'll have my color picker pop up on the screen. So maybe I want to change it to red. I'll just click OK, and that'll change my color of my text. I can bold or italicize it. I can also change the size, and as I said, also the font. Next, we'll go to text format. So text format just really gives me extra options on how I can format my text. That's inside of my edit text tab. So if I just select border, you'll see that I can change the border around my text. I can change the width of it. I can do a gradient fill, which has some options in it as well. And I can also add shadow effects. So there's several shadow effects. We have a hard shadow, a drop shadow, inset shadow, and a glow. I can also come down here and change the opacity of the glow, the blur radius, and I can even change the blur or the opacity color if I want. Now let's go up to the box format tab. So box format really just refers to this box that's around your widget inside of Elementi. So you'll see these centipede lines around the text layer. If I select matte, it'll actually add pretty much a background around my box. I can come in here and change the color of that. If I double click on this paint bucket, I can make it blue if I want. I'll just match the OK button. I can say I want a watermark or kind of fade this color, so I can change the opacity. Maybe make it a little bit of a lighter blue. A little bit more see-through, so it goes with the white background. I can add a border if I want around the text layer. So we have different options here. We have a solid, a dashed, a dotted, and even a double. And of course, you can come down here and change the width of your border. You can even manually type in the width if you'd like. We also have padding options that we can change. So this is the padding of the text, or how far the text is inside of from within the borders of the box. We can cut corners. So if I wanted to round this off, the first option default is actually to cut the corners. But you can round it off as well by clicking on this first box. And you can change the width to see how, change how rounded it's going to be. Last, we have shadow. So we have a couple different shadows. The first is shadow in. Then we have shadow out. We have a reflection. So if you look on the bottom, you'll see there's a small reflection of this box, or text layer. I can actually increase the width, and you'll see that it gets larger. Our shadow does. The last is soft edges. This puts some soft edges around our border or our box. So we can increase the width. It'll actually bring more of a shadow inside of the box, which I don't prefer. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit to maybe 30. Our next tab is in effect. So this is the effect that your layer is going to have as it comes onto the screen. We have different options. So we have no effect, which is just, default. We have fade in, slide in, fly in, wipe bar in, wipe box in, and zoom in. So these are all probably similar to what you might have in slideshow applications that you use like PowerPoint between changing slides. So let's use slide in as an example. If I select my slide in, I can change my direction. So left to right, right to left, top to bottom, bottom to top. And this black diamond's actually a random option. So I'm going to leave it from left to right. And I'm going to set a duration down here below to 2. You can also type it in here. So what's going to happen is at my begin time of 15 seconds, I'm going to have this in effect on my layer. So let me click OK. And we're going to go back to right before 15 seconds using our timeline. We're just going to drag back. And you'll see now our in effect came in. So let's go back. The next tab we have is called a highlight. So this is really just an effect that's actually used in combination to your effects. So right now I have a blink, nudge, nudge diagonal, and the one I have selected is a nudge zoom. So you'll notice when this widget or layer came into the screen, it actually had more of a zoom effect. So it didn't just slide into the screen, it kind of zoomed in. I also had the direction of zoom in selected as opposed to zoom out. But if I was to change it to nudge, or let's try nudge diagonal, and we'll use a top right to bottom left direction. Select OK, and you'll notice that my layer doesn't just come into the screen using the effect, it also has a highlight around it as it comes in. So there it is. You saw it had a slight nudge to it. Next, let's go to Out Effect. Out Effect has all the same options that you had with your In Effect. It's just the opposite. So if you had a specified time, for example, and it was time for your layer to, disappear, you could select an Out Effect for how it would exit the screen. Last, we have our Advanced tab. So Advanced is actually, when you first open Advanced, you're going to see there's two headers. You have name and value. This is the duration, and it's set to indefinite. Now, if I double click under name to click to add and click this drop down, you'll see that I have a ton of options. So, for example, audio level would be the level of audio that I have or wanted to set for my layer. So, for example, if I was using a media layer, I could set it to 0 in the values column. I would just double click on it, hit 0. This would mute my layer. So if I had like a video file or something inside of it, it would mute the audio. There's tons of options here in this drop down, things to choose from, but you can learn more about this by going to support.spinetics.com, where there's tons of documentation on each of these things and links to different pages that explain what these settings are. So now that we're done with our text layer, let's select OK, and let's move on to a media layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over here and right click and delete this layer. And now I'm going to drag and drop a playlist into my edit panel, add it as a layer. And a playlist is a media layer. So it's a type of media layer. So we're going to use this as an example. It's just a simple playlist with a couple of videos inside of it. So I'm going to go the same way I access the properties of my text layer I'm going to do for my media layer. I'll go to the edit panel and double click on this blue gear. Now you'll notice a lot of these tabs look the same as they did for our text layer. That's because they are. The main difference here, other than box format, effects, highlight, and advanced, is the essentials tab. So let's go over the Essentials tab so we can see what's different. So the first thing we have is our URI. This is similar to our text layer. It's just the name of our layer. So it just says playlist.svg. Playlist is the name of my playlist. When I created it, I just named it playlist.svg is the type of file. Below that, there's a proof of play button or box. So if you select this box and click OK and publish this project to your player, it'll actually write logs to your player for proof of play. So this is useful if you want to have these logs in your accounting logs on your player. So if you're looking for proof of play, you can do this with any of your media layers that you'd like. Begin time, this is the same as our text layer. So right now it's 0000, but we can change the begin time to anything that we want. So maybe we don't want it to start at the beginning, we can change it to anything else, just like we did with our text layer. Duration, just a little bit different. You'll notice with the text layer we had indefinite and specify as our two options. With a media layer we had the option to play it once. So what this would do is it would play through my playlist one time and then stop. So it's completely up to you, but you have the ability to play your media layers once. Opacity, so this is the same as our text layer. You can watermark your layer if you'd like. Media fit, this is just how your media inside of the layer is going to fit. So you have a couple of options. You have fill, meet, slice, and then you can also align things with the options such as center, left, right, top, and bottom. Last, we have position. So you can set the position of your layer if you want, just like you did with your text layer. If you don't want to drag and drop it or move it around on your screen and manipulate it using the arrows in the preview panel, you can actually come here and let's say I want to move this to the left by one and set it to 100. So this is the pixels, by the way, on the screen. So I'm going to select OK. You'll see it move just a little bit, but we'll do something a little bit more drastic so you can see the difference here. We'll set it to 0. So when I set it to 0, you'll see it went to the far left of the screen. The boxes did, or the bounding box did. So this just gives you an extra option on how you might want to move your layers around on your screen. Now that we've covered the media layer, let's move on to the last type of layer, which is a web page layer. So I'm going to right click and delete this playlist, and I'm going to go to the top right side of my screen, and you'll see right here I can have the option to add a web page layer. Once I select this, it's just going to ask me for a URI or URL pointing towards the page I want to display on my screen. I'm just going to use the default download.spinx.com page. Click OK. And I'm going to resize it. Okay, so just like with our text and our media layer, let's go to the right and double click on the blue gear. Now everything here is the same. We see our URI field, which is just the name or where it's pointed towards, where the layer is pointed towards in this case, which is our download.spinx.com page. We see proof of play, begin time, duration, opacity, and position. The main difference here with these layer properties are these two checkboxes you see at the bottom. Now the first one is enable JavaScript, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's just you select this if you want to specify whether JavaScript code on the web page can be executed once it's pulled into the preview panel. And then you have the web security checkbox, which just specifies whether web security is enforced. This is actually checked by default. When you check this, cross-origin resource sharing is enabled. Local resource, which means you cannot access remote URLs, and you can have navigation away from the page that's actually not permitted when this is selected. So you have these two checkboxes that are just a little bit different than the other layers, but you can learn more about this by going to support.spinetics.com. If you go to the search bar on the top right side of the screen and type in web page layer, you should be able to find a page on web pages, and it'll give you all the information that you need on these type of layers. So changing the layer properties is a great simple way to modify, various settings related to your layers. As you can see, there's tons of possibilities, and really endless things that you can do with all the options that you have available to you. With that being said, thank you for watching this tutorial video. And if you ever have any other questions, as I've said several times before, feel free to look up any of this, the layer properties page, web page layers, by going to support.spinetics.com. Thank you and have a great day.